When I first came to work for Champlain Valley Equipment, we had 2 locations. We were separate entities, so there required a lot of background entries that people don't normally do in accounting, because they would pay for something that was really for us and we would pay for something that was really for them. So we really had to keep track of that, because it was like a payable to each other. So even though we were one company, acting like one company, we were really 2 separate companies. So for tax purposes and seeing earning purposes, we had to keep track of that. And then just as we get that under our belt and a handle, we bought in 08, they bought a new company, Derby. So we had to teach Derby, because they were using a different business system, come into ours, start to standardize our procedures. And that's when CVE really started to make Middlebury the headquarters, and we started to define people's roles and switch people's roles around. So my role from a plain bookkeeper started to grow into becoming the accountant of the company. And at that time I got an assistant and started supervising her, and she did more of the data entry, and I did more of the analyzation and making sure things were going right. That time I also did standard procedures for accounts payable, because at that time we had to have someone at each location also enter payables, because there were so many pieces of paper to get entered into the computer, and not all one person can do it, from 3 locations. And that was our first time we had to do I did an implementation. We started with a checklist, and you had to think, well, what are they going to need? What kind of things can I write up for them to help them, because since they're so far away, you can't be there, every day. And so it's a lot of help over the phone, but it was also a learning process and thinking, well, if we do this again, we'll need this, this, and this. And so our checklist could be a little more organized. And then in 2012, we merged those 3 companies into one company, those 3 entities with separate federal ID numbers into one company, which required tons and tons of paperwork for all our different vendors. We have countless vendors, from our big tractors down to the small bolts that you need at parts. Depending on what line it is, you might need a separate vendor to carry those parts to keep your customers going, and that keeps your business going. So in that transaction, there was paperwork from the state that was very thick that we had to fill out and explain to them that we merged, to figuring out the correct shares and working through that. And also then in 2012 we purchased another location, and that was different than when we bought Derby, because Derby we were keeping, but this location we were just kind of merging in with a previous location. So there wasn't so much training, but just reconciling the sale and putting, for me it was a lot more putting their entries into the system. And when we took over that, we also gained a couple more lines, so that required some more paperwork to those vendors, more vendors I have to each year send financials to and answer their questions on why this is that, so that we can keep our line of credits open with them. And then in October we purchased Berlin, and by then we were almost pretty much experts at because it would have been our 2nd acquisition that year. So we kind of went in as a team. Luckily we had a good rapport, because if you're acquiring someone and you have a certain date when they're going to switch over and be under your umbrella, if you can get in there before then to do some pre-training and look around to what they have going on and how they do things, and even simple things to looking at what kind of computers they have, then you don't get all try to shove everything on one day. So Berlin, we were able to get in a week before and start some training, check out their computers, and talk about how they do things. And we had our checklist again to go in there, what to do. We had my list I made up, which was shortcuts in the system, because they were changing to a new system, which is always a big curveball to get over when you acquire a new position. So I went from the mundane bookkeeper to the accountant / helping with the implementations of when we do acquisitions. And if we buy another location, because it seems this industry is going towards larger dealerships than your mom and pops. I can't, this isn't a number, but I know, since I've been here, we've purchased 3 of them. into one, and that's in a span of 7 years. So if I'm here 7 more years, we'll at least get 3 more, right? So by then we'll, you know, and as you grow, you need to standardize your procedures so that everyone's comparing apples to apples. Because if you have one location doing something one way and another location doing something the other way, when you go to look at your numbers to gauge where you are, they don't do things the exact same way. You're comparing apples to oranges, and you want to compare apples to apples. And for us, that's a constant work in progress. We're having a meeting this week to help standardize, you know, some of the accounting, which also means you need to standardize how, you know, instances come up. Like if a customer, you need to write something off. How do you do that? It sounds easy, but it's got to be standardized, and depending on, you know, if it's a warranty or customer internal, it has to be done the same way.